Soon Chung Park, Hyun Jung Kim, Soon Cha Kim, Yong Ae Yue, Xiaojie Tan, Daoyou Feng, Delaina Ashley Yaun, and Paul Andre Michels. We are here to honor their lives and the lives of the thousands of Asians lost and harmed in America due to anti-Asian racism. We are here to grieve as a collective, to feel pain and sadness, and to attempt to heal together. It is a condition of one's Asianness in America to take up as little space as possible, even in collective grief and mourning. It is a condition predicated on Asian systemic invisibility and perpetual foreignness, but it's not a condition that we have to accept. What happened in Atlanta was a tragedy, an act of white supremacy and racism that is reflected within the structures that are vested within the larger American government and country. Already, we see the media trying to whitewash the incident of the murders of 6 Asian women and sex workers, an intersection that cannot go unnoticed. They say that it was not racially motivated, taking words of the police over the stories of these women, saying that the shooter was just having a bad day, and citing mental health. His identity as a white man protects him from being held accountable. These excuses are simply put aberrant, and they reflect and uphold the sway and power of white supremacy, white guilt, and the reluctance of the country and its people to reckon with racism and reality. We will not fall into such strategies. We will not stoop to erasure and to reduction and to neglect, and we will not treat this as one isolated incident, one bad apple, or one bad day. It is the newest in a long line of violent, tragic, hate-filled acts enacted upon our people, and we will call it as such. Since March 2020, about 3,800 incidents, racist incidents against Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders have been reported to the group Stop AAPI Hate. President Biden condemned, quote unquote, vicious hate crimes against Asian Americans who have been attacked, harassed, blamed, and scapegoated, marking an aesthetic contrast with his predecessor who harmfully referred to COVID-19 as the China virus or the Kung flu. But still, Biden just approved an ICE deportation of 33 Vietnamese refugees despite a 100-day moratorium on deportations. The administration turns a blind eye incessantly towards anti-Asian racism and violence. They thrust upon us the model minority myth, the guise of the American dream, and yet are silent when our people are subject to racialized violence, when our people are living in poverty and fear, and the uneasiness of making a home in a country that will never allow you to belong, who believe you are perpetually an other. To this end, we will not be silent. We refuse to be invisible and bystanders and passive and cold and obedient like the stereotypes cast us as. This is our space here. We also refuse to ask for more policing and surveillance as answers. This, we know, would only serve to reify the white supremacist policing and carceral institutions that keep us and our Black, Brown, and Indigenous kin on the margins. We must work and organize along other oppressed peoples in America for our collective liberation and justice. As we think of the term Asian American as a coalition-building, non-monolithic, or generalizing term, one that began in 1968 by radical student organizers who envisioned a pan-Asian, anti-racist, anti-imperialist movement, we embrace it, and we stand in solidarity with one another. Tonight, we mourn and heal together in the wake of rampant anti-Asian violence. So, I hope you like that introduction speech. As a little precursor to this evening, we next have 2 speakers, Ms. Susan Liu and Jacqueline McNeil. After these 2 speakers, we're gonna have an open mic, and we're gonna open the stage to all who would like to participate. Please feel welcome to share any stories, anecdotes, statements, poetry on Asianness and anti-Asian violence. This is a healing, welcoming space, and everyone's input is valued. And finally, at 7 p.m. as the sun sets, we're gonna have PengCheng give a mournful cello performance of Bach's Cello Suite No. 3 Sarabande, followed by a candlelighting ceremony and 8 minutes of silence.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm gonna stand where Anh-Ton is standing. My name is Susan Liu, and I'm the president of Asian Americans in Action, which is the only progressive Asian American advocacy group in Orange County. I'm here today as an advocate, but also as a proud parent to 2 Asian American teenagers. First, I want to thank Anh-Ton for creating this event for all of us to get together, support each other, and honor the lives of the Atlanta victims. Let's give a hand to Anh-Ton. The Atlanta victims were all unique human beings who were loved and who had dreams for the future. I don't know about you, but when I see their faces, I see all of my Asian aunties, and it hurts to know that they were hunted down and killed for being Asian women. I'm gonna assume that everyone here has heard a lot about how there's been a long history of anti-Asian sentiments in the US and a general disdain for Asian Americans for pretty much ever. So I'm not gonna rehash that today. If you want to learn more, watch the Asian Americans documentary on PBS. It's very good, very comprehensive, and very well done. Today, I want to talk about the feelings that we might all be having and to encourage all of you to use your feelings to create lasting change. If you've been hearing daily about anti-Asian acts of violence happening all over the country, you might, if you're Asian, you might feel somewhat vulnerable and somewhat of a target when you walk around out in the streets. As a mom of Asian American teens, I hate that you all have to experience this. I hate that the world is not a better place. Do I wish that you could all have a carefree youth and not have to walk around looking over your shoulder? Absolutely. If I could wave a magic wand and make this go away, I would. But since I can't, we're gonna reframe the heck out of this pain and vulnerability. We're gonna start to look at our pain as a gift. And that sounds really weird, but your pain is a gift. Because if you're lucky enough to feel this way for the first time in your life, then you now have the gift of empathy. Empathy for Black people, empathy for LGBTQ people, for Jewish people, Muslim people, Sikh people, Middle Eastern people after 9/11, and Latinx people, and more. Anyone who is marginalized in America, who is unwanted, and who is hated for who they are. The same hate that killed 8 people in Atlanta is the same hate that created the system that killed George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Elijah McClain, Matthew Shepard, Tamir Rice, and countless others. It's all the same hate. So when you fight against anti-Asian hate, I hope you will take the words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. to heart. No one is free until we are all free. That's all I wanted to say today, but I wanted to offer our Asian American youth in the crowd some resources. This is a shameless plug, but check out my website at aaction.org. But also there's a wonderful national organization that was started here in Orange County by a student at Tesoro High School. It's called dearasianyouth.org, and it's a beautiful organization aesthetically, and they have lots of resources that make you feel seen and heard, and they give you lots of options for actions. And thirdly, if you're interested in Asian American progressive activism at the national level, check out AsianAmericansAdvancingJustice.org. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jacqueline. I'm a senior at Sage. And yeah, I'm 18. I'm half Chinese. And Anh-Ton asked me to speak today. And first of all, thank you, Anh-Ton, just for putting this all together. And thank you for bringing it to the attention of Sage and bringing it up to our community. I really appreciate that you're doing this and doing this for everyone. First off, I want to start by taking a moment of silence for the victims of the Atlanta shooting. My heart goes out to all 8 of their families and loved ones, and I can't imagine how hard it is to lose someone like that. Of the 8 victims, 7 of them were women and 6 of them were Asian. In 2020 alone, hate crimes against Asian Americans have increased by over 150%. I have read about hate crimes in our own community and heard stories from friends and family reminding me to be safe. Asian women have specifically been targeted, so I stress over the safety of my grandma, moms, and aunts and friends. Casual racism against Asians has become so normalized in our community and in our country. We are stereotyped with the model minority myth, and racism against Asians is often dismissed or not covered in the media. Oftentimes, I have friends who call me insensitive and racist nicknames just because they do not know any better. And when I tell them to stop, I am being deemed as too sensitive. Throughout my life, I have been subject to a good deal of racial slurs, nicknames, and teasing by kids who just don't know any better. Luckily for me, I have not experienced any direct hateful attacks in the last year, but I have heard countless stories from family members and friends about their experiences with day-to-day anti-Asian crimes that have occurred at grocery stores and in public spaces. It breaks my heart to hear one of my teachers talk about how her dad has to carry a knife around. I hear about my aunts and my mom who now have to carry around alarms and sirens because they're worried about being attacked in public spaces. And this is just not acceptable. And a lot of it was, in my opinion, brought on by the harmful and racist rhetoric of our last president that still has not yet been apologized for or even addressed. Even in the smallest decisions, this has kind of affected my life. When deciding where to go to college, diversity was a huge factor. And in the end, I'm going to the school that has a much greater Asian American community just because I would feel safer there. And sadly, and luckily in a way, I don't think I would have considered this 2 years ago if I had been making that decision. But now it is like a factor in how I want to spend my future. So being Asian is a big part of my identity, and I'm really proud to be a part of the Asian community. And as Anh-Ton said earlier, the mic is open to anyone who wants to share their experiences as an Asian or as an Asian American. And I just kind of wanted to get the ball rolling with that. So I'll turn the mic back over to you. And
thank you, Jacqueline. Thank you, Miss Liu. So for those of you who want to speak, you can just come and pick that up. You don't have to speak to the entire crowd like this. I know it can be kind of daunting. So yeah, I just want to encourage an open environment. You can come up here if you want, or you can just pick up the microphone or the megaphone and just go back to where you are and give a speech.
All right. So not a lot of you know me, only because I'm not super active, in any political landscape. But so I'm a grad student at UCI. And then I'm also the host at Không Nói Không Biết, which is a Vietnamese channel organization that discuss policies and different topics so that elders in our community can understand. And so the reason why that is important, especially in the Vietnamese community, is because most of our channel owned by Fox as well as media are super biased, leading to a majority of us are Republicans, unfortunately. And like my parents are a good good people, but they don't understand, they've been biased because that's the only news that they get out, and that's the only news that they know. So our job as the Không Nói Không Biết team on Facebook, you can find us at KNKB, is to discuss these type of policies both in English and Vietnamese to encourage young Vietnamese Americans to know more about the policies and talk to their parents about it, to kind of like get the ball rolling in any sense. And I think the Atlanta shooting, it wasn't a surprise. I knew it was gonna happen. One way or another, it was gonna happen. And the fact that it happened, that's the catalyst, for all of this to be in action. It makes me sad that it has to happen for it to happen. For like the vigil and the protests and whatnot. But I think, as a young Asian American, I want to encourage, you know, all future Asian Americans to find your political voice and start doing something about it, because, you know, we don't get to, we're not super political because, you know, our culture and how we are. And I think, you know, now is the time. There's a lot of policies that we need to change. There's a lot of internal work that we need to do with our own parents. And there's also many things that we need to do in order to make sure things like this doesn't happen again. And I'll just tell you a story, I guess, of so I'm not originally born here. I was born in Vietnam. And when I came over here, everything was new and, you know, in life. And so my mom and dad was finding a job. My mom finally got a job. She worked as a nail technician. But one day she got home and she was all battered up because she was trying to cross the street and some car hit her and jacked her. And she just, they just kind of like, they didn't even stop. They just kept going. And she just walked back to her nail store, just all battered. And she said, you know what, it's fine. This is how it is. Well, it's not supposed to be like that. That in no way should that be okay. And I worry for my mom, and I worry for my whole family. And like, we shouldn't feel this way. We should do something about it. And, you know, I'm grateful for all the organizers and all like the major organizations, people that are involved. You guys are doing great. And I hope that, you know, I can contribute my own way too.
All right, yeah, thank you for that speech. I think that's a sentiment that really does ring true. There's an almost virulent strain of conservatism and Trumpism within our especially elderly Asian American community. And it really hurts to see that like Vietnamese immigrants who immigrated to here from America in the 70s are now supporting President Trump, or supporting people who are against the situation at the border, and who are frankly like, it's an atrocity being committed to the border. I think it's really sad to see that the rhetoric, the incredible anti-communist rhetoric, the Cold War era rhetoric, which powered the wars on our countries, the wars and genocides on Korea and Vietnam, are still very strong parts of our community today. And I think that's something that we're gonna have to reconcile with if we're ever to move forward with Asian American liberation or emancipation. That being said, the mic is open. If anyone wants to speak on that or speak on more personal experiences, you're more than welcome to.
Hi, my name is Drew Ishii, and I was asked to, attend this, and I'm a teacher. And as an educator, I feel lots of things, but the thing I feel the most is anger. I am so angry right now, and our country is, it's surprising as not surprising. And I think that's what's really hard for some people to understand. So I'm honored to be speaking here. I also want to acknowledge that we are speaking on stolen land from the Kizh and Tongva people, who are the original owners of the land, keepers of the land. And I am Japanese. My grandparents' grandparents came from Japan. And I identify as a Pacific Islander because my family is from Hawaii. I am 5th generation, and I'm Asian American, but I didn't grow up Asian. I didn't know what that was until it happened to me. And I was in high school. It wasn't until high school that I realized that I had been racialized in this country. And it took my best friend, who was Vietnamese, a Vietnamese immigrant. He still is Vietnamese. And he was using the term Asian and Asian American. And I was like, yeah, but I grew up Japanese. I grew up Hawaiian. Like, I don't really know what Asian is, right? And then I came to realize that all of these people who have roots from Asia are this Asian American thing, right? So I never learned these things. And I'm angry that young people like you all still don't. You're not learning the history, right? You're not learning that, you're not learning the history, you're not learning that the activism, all of this that our people have been doing in this country for a really long time, right? And just so you know, they haven't liked us the whole time we've been here. Ever since we got here, they haven't liked us, okay? And so none of this is surprising. It's infuriating though. And my heart goes out to the victims and everybody who is traumatized by these hate crimes. It's ridiculous. And so, you know, I speak at schools, other schools from the one that I teach at. I speak at schools about the model minority myth. You may have heard about this, you may not. You certainly have experienced it. And if you are Asian, you have experienced it. And again, it was not something I learned about. But when I really internalized what the model minority myth was, I was like, this is not okay. I'm not okay with this. It was designed, right? If there's a model minority, that means there's a bad one. And I am not okay being complicit in a system that is holding me up in order to hold another group down. I'm not okay with that. And so this is what inspires me. This is what keeps me going. I'm not going to perpetrate any more of that. I cannot be complicit with that system. And that is my personal activism. And I think that you know, one of the things I hear a lot of students say, Asian kids in particular, are like, yeah, I don't really experience racism. And I've come to realize what this means. And racism in this country has really been defined by the Black experience, right? But this is the thing. America is really great about being nuanced about its racism. And so we as Asian Americans don't experience racism the same way the Black community does, right? When you're being made fun of because of the food you eat, or your accent, or your language, or your culture, guess what that is? When you're being teased for the ethnic clothes or something that you wear, and then white people wear it, and they're praised for it, and they're cool, guess what that is? So there's just so much, there's so many layers to this conversation. And, you know, I give workshops on all these things. And so we can like break it all down, but I'm not gonna do that now. But, you know, one of the things I think you should all understand is that, you probably know this, is that you've been taught to put your head down and just work hard. Well, where has that gotten us? Right? We've been here for over 200 years and that hasn't really worked, right? And a lot of our experience and a lot of our pain is invisible, but we're not invisible. Because if we were, these hate crimes wouldn't be happening, right? They would just let us go. It'd be fine. I wouldn't have to worry about my aunties and my uncles and my grandma and my grandpa and all that stuff, right? So our experiences have been erased, our history has been erased, but that needs to stop. That can't happen anymore. So I need you all as young people to find your voice, right? And to speak up. Keep your head up and work hard. And really find your voice, and you need to speak up. And I know that this goes counter to like everything that we've been taught in our lives, but enough is enough. And so I actually, last Wednesday, I wrote something and I put it on social media, and I have it here. wanted to read it because I think it's appropriate. I made notes because I'm a teacher, so I'm prepared. Did I say everything? No, I didn't say everything. Oh, so this is how gross this is. Our history has been so erased that, you know, I didn't know that our people marched with Dr. King. Our people marched and worked with Malcolm X. Our people worked with Cesar Chavez. My people were at Selma in Alabama. I didn't learn this. I'm so pissed that I didn't know this. I had to go to Selma, Alabama to realize that there were Hawaiians there marching, you know, with the late John Lewis and Dr. King. Okay, here's what Survivor. I promise I won't take any more time. So, America, your toxic whiteness is killing us. Your toxic masculinity is killing us. Clearly, no lives matter in America when you kill police at the Capitol, when you kill Black folks who are sleeping, when you kill children who are at school, when you kill people who came here for a better life, when you kill Asian folks at work, when you kill people minding their own business, when you kill people who were here first. But you've always done this. When will it end? Black folks can't end racism. Asian folks can't end racism. Brown folks can't end racism. Indigenous folks can't end racism. If we could, it would have been done. It would be done by now. Stop the xenophobia, stop the hate. White people need to step up. White people will end racism. Do better, America. We all deserve it. We all deserve life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So I'm going to leave you with this. Those of you who know me know that I take lots of inspiration from Beyonce. And so, in her words, I'm going to keep running because the winner don't quit on themselves. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much for that, Dr. Ishii. And again, the mic is still open for anyone who would like to speak or touch on the events happening in Atlanta or anti-Asian racism.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tuan Nguyen. I'm Anh-Ton's dad. Glad to be here. Obviously, you know Vietnamese, so we immigrated here in the 70s. So this is all this racism is pretty old for us. And I guess I'm a modern minority, so put my head down, work hard, and make a living in America. But you know, we are fortunate enough to travel the world, and this is actually one of the best countries in the world, believe it or not. We went back to Vietnam, and we're actually not even accepted there as much as we're here. So this is a, you know, the best country that you can live in, basically. Opportunities are plentiful, work hard, you get everywhere. Problem with racism, it's actually so deep-seated. You know, I've been trying to look for a solution, but it's going to be very difficult. Kids are born without racism. By the age of 3, they become racist. That's across all cultures, basically. So what gives? The households, the parents, the teachings, the culture. How do we go about changing it? What's the solution to all this? Like the teachers was just that it's going to be very difficult. I mean, it's not even in the conscious mind; it's in the subconscious mind. When you see a people of color, it's already, no, he's not the same. He's not equal. I mean, that's just part of, I think, human nature. That's how caveman try to protect and fight amongst tribes back in the days. So all we can do is start a conversation, bring it to the level where people are more conscious. And I was hoping that instead of saying the Pledge of Allegiance to America to a flag every day at school, they should pledge to, you know, abort racism and all that, which will bring to the forefront of conversation. Otherwise, the problem is so deep-seated that it's not going to change. And no matter what we do, you know, it's got to change from the white people. And this is sort of innate because that's how they're raised. Solution is going to be very difficult to solve. But I hope you all just, bring it up to a conversation level where we can talk and start slowly delve into it and just make a little change at a time. But I expect it's going to be decades from now where we'll be looked upon as equal as the white people in America.
All right, thank you, Dad. I think you hit on a lot of great points there. I think I think this country it's one that's built on a legacy of racism, and it's something that's very, very deeply seated within our country. However, to that effect, I think I am optimistic for the future. I think with the internet, with new movements, with Vigil being organized in 2 days on Instagram, I think we are seeing more awareness and we are seeing a positive future. To that effect, I just wanted to thank everyone here for being here. I think you guys are part of the movement and you guys are part of the change. Right now, we're talking about anti-Asian racism. We're talking about racism against Asian Americans, and we're educating ourselves and we're being aware of that. I think just seeing this crowd here gives me hope. This gives me optimism, and I just wanted to thank you all for coming here. I know it's difficult in COVID, but I think the future does look good, and I think people are being educated. Racism is ingrained in your subconscious by the age of 3. But then if we're learning about that now, I think we can erase those memories and we can erase those patterns of thought. So again, thank you everyone for coming here. And as always, if anyone would like to speak to touch on anything that's been said, the mic is more than open. Please feel welcome.
Hi, so my name's Melinda, and I'm from Sage Hill. I'm half Chinese. My mom's from China, and she immigrated here in the 80s, and my other side is white, pretty much as Caucasian as you can be. But I just wanted to speak about how I recently learned about my mom and her experiences with racism. And so she immigrated through San Francisco, and she just recently told me that she didn't really know that she experienced racism until all of these things started happening. And she realized even though she was spit on and called racial slurs for being Chinese in San Francisco, she didn't realize that it was racism, and she was just going along with her life oh yeah, I've never experienced racism or anything like that. And I find that really sad, and I feel like a lot of people might be experiencing that, especially back then when this conversation wasn't as spoken about. And I wasn't really aware of all of the Asian racism happening either, even though I was half Asian. And that kind of embarrasses me in a way. And so because of that, I've started to try to learn about my Asian heritage and just more about what my mom has been through. And I've opened up conversations with her about her experiences, and I've tried to learn about Chinese history more. And I just wanted to say, I guess, especially to the kids who have Asian parents, they're right there. Just go open up the conversation and learn more about your culture. And it's honestly really cool, and it's definitely worth it. So that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Melinda. And now I think a lot of people have touched on something similar. I think there's a common theme in a lot of this. A lot of anti-Asian racism is invisible. We've all been victims of anti-Asian racism, and sometimes we haven't even recognized it. We just haven't even noticed it. I'm reminded of when I was in grade school. I was in 3rd grade or 4th grade. A girl went up to me and asked, "If you're Asian, why don't your eyes look like this?" and proceeded to do a caricature slanting her eyes. Another time, that year, I used to wear a necklace of the Buddha, and someone came up to me and told me, "Wait, but isn't Buddha created by the devil?" And this was in 4th grade.
we were kids at this time. This like, and when that happened, like I didn't think it was racism. I just thought it was weird. I felt some weird obligation that something strange was happening, but I didn't feel racialized. I didn't feel that this was particularly wrong, and I thought it was just another insult, another middle school thing that gets thrown out. But now that I look back on it, I realize that it's not okay. That at the age of 4th grade, that people shouldn't be giving racist remarks, and that it's not okay for that to happen. I think the condition of one's Asianness in America is one of invisibility, and that's because Asian American racism, anti-Asian racism, takes a much different form. Like Dr. Ishii was speaking on, it takes a much different form than the anti-black racism, anti-brown, anti-Muslim racism, which we see with brutality from the police. It is, but it does take a much different form than that. But it is still racism. Whenever you get profiled for the way your eyes look, whenever someone talks slower to you because you have a bit of an accent, whenever someone thinks that the food you're eating is weird, or thinks that you're funny for using chopsticks, that is racism. And I think that's something we all need to recognize. All right, everyone. So, Ryan Joshi just commented this on the Zoom, and I'll read this out. So, thank you again, everyone, for all of your stories. I have thought about this talking point as well. And when I tell people I'm half Nepalese American, people keep saying you're Nepalian. While previously I thought it was just because they just couldn't pronounce it correctly. Well, I truly believe they don't intend on being racist. Their inability to pronounce Nepalese is a remnant of racism. People have also assumed I'm Hindu because I'm 1/2 Nepali American and I don't eat beef, while I'm actually Catholic. I think, Ryan, that's a great comment. It's certainly is a big part of anti-Asian racism, of generalizing and assuming all Asians to be the same. And I think this is something that we should also strive to focus on as well, because in the movement for Asian American solidarity and in the movement against anti-Asian racism, sometimes it is easy to forget the nuances of our different specific Asian ethnicities. A big example that comes to mind, or like one big example of this, is that the immigration stories, for example, of Vietnamese Americans or Chinese Americans, Japanese Americans, are all very different. And those different immigration stories, I think, have different effects. If you're immigrating from a war zone, or if you're immigrating for an opportunity. And I think those do have profoundly different effects. And sometimes when we talk about when in the movement for Asian American solidarity, those differences can be erased. So I think it is always important to maintain nuance in this solidarity. I think we need to be cautious to make sure Asian American doesn't become a term for generalization, but rather a term for unity.
Hi, I'm Isaac. I'm a senior at Sage. I'm full Korean. My dad immigrated here when he was 4 in 1973, and my mom's parents immigrated in the 70s to Hawaii, and she came here later. Wasn't really planning on talking. I don't really talk very much. But what Dr. Ishii said really spoke to me about how a lot of his students say that they never really experienced racism. And I always kind of had that view too. I never really thought I experienced racism living here in Orange County, growing up in Huntington Beach. Even in my public school, I didn't really think so. But what he said just got me thinking, and I realized that, yeah, racism for Asian Americans is very different. And I thought I'd just give an experience that I had when I was younger that just kind of came up recently that I thought about and I hadn't really realized was an experience. Must have been 5-6 years ago. My sister and I were at the 99-cent store with my mom was in the car. We just ran to get candy or something, and there was kind of a long line, but there was only one cash register open, and they realized that they needed to get all the people through the line, so they opened up another cash register, and we're in the kind of the back of the line, and they're like, oh, whoever's ready, come here, and no one went because no one was really paying attention. So my sister and I rushed over to the open cash register, and we just beat this other lady, and right as we came up, she looked down on us and said, of course, Asians. And I never really thought about that as anything up until a couple like weeks ago. And yeah, I think that it really is time for our younger generation to speak up.
All right, thank you for sharing that, Isaac. If anyone else would like to share any experiences, any anecdotes with anti-Asian violence and anti-Asian racism, are more than welcome.
Hi, I'm Tia. So I hate public speaking. I have a fear of it, but the pain in my heart is calling me to speak. So if I cry, I'm sorry. So when I first heard the news of the shooting, I immediately thought of my grandma. My grandma just turned 90 this year, and she was the first one that came here to America. So I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for her. And I just didn't realize that as soon as I heard about the shooting, I didn't allow myself to process all the racism that I've witnessed from my family and what I've experienced myself. And I just want to encourage you guys to also give yourself time to really process what you've been through and what you've experienced. And so I held space for my grandma. I held a lot of space for her, and I thought of all the times that she stood silent, but all she could think about was her family and giving them a better life. And I just can't imagine how these children feel to know that their parents were shot down and killed just because they were working hard to take care of their family. And I just want to know that you are heard, you are seen, and you are valid. And really, truly, just give yourself to process this, because this is heavy stuff. And you are worthy to be stood up for. And so that's all I had to say, but I'm sending you all my love. I love you guys.
All right, thank you so much. I just saw a comment on the Zoom meeting, which I want to read out. I think it rings pretty true. Antoinette Nguyen. I agree with you that anti-Asian racism looks different than other racism in America. However, police brutality absolutely impacts Asians as well. Yang Song is an Asian woman and sex worker sexually assaulted, brutalized, and then killed by police. Christian Hall was a young 20-year-old man who was murdered while having a mental health crisis this year. Police are made to brutalize and inflict violence against all non-white and marginalized people in America. And in addition, thinking of the term Asian American as more of a coalition rather than an identity is vital. I think these points do really ring true. In the summer, of course, we all experienced the BLM protests, these anti-police protests. And I think it's harmful. It's only harmful to think that the police don't affect Asians. I think in our strive for Asian American emancipation, for liberation, for solidarity, we should seek to have solidarity with other marginalized and oppressed peoples. Several speakers here have expressed this sentiment, but I think this is something that's really important because we see strains of anti-Black racism, anti-brown racism in our own Asian communities. I've seen so many examples of this, and it hurts because it's only benefiting, it's hurting everyone, and it's only benefiting white supremacy to have infighting between marginalized and oppressed groups. If anyone else would like to speak on this or to speak about the topics in general, the mic is open.
Hi guys, my name's Kristen. I definitely wasn't planning to speak, so just don't look at me. I'm really nervous. I definitely won't be as eloquent as Anh-Ton or anybody else who's spoken, but I feel like I have a deep shame within myself for something I experienced when I was younger. So first of all, thank you all for being here. I came out here on a whim. I'm actually from LA, and I came here with my friends and just wanted to support. But something that my parents don't know is that I'm here. I'm literally the black sheep of my family. Everyone in my family thinks I'm too sensitive, as a lot of us may have been called, for standing up for what we believe in. But I don't let that stop me. I'm definitely someone who still needs to educate myself on things. I don't know a lot about Asian history, admittedly, but I am proud of who I am, and it wasn't always that way. So the story that I have, I was taking notes while everyone was speaking. So I was sent to a very predominantly white middle school by my parents. I went to a private school, and at that school, I would be shamed for my lunch. So I was one of 4 Asian kids in my grade, and there were like 40 of us. And yeah, as you know, I would like stick out like a sore thumb. And my mom would pack me like thermos lunches. It was like hot lunches with rice and dumplings, or like some type of like hot food, while all my classmates brought like sandwiches or like Easy Mac and cup noodles. And at first I didn't think anything of it, but as the days went on, people would make fun of my food for being smelly, or just, ew, what is that? Or just like very mean things. And I grew to feel ashamed of myself and of my culture. During middle school, I didn't really have any confidence issues, but around that time was when I started to feel like I wasn't beautiful because I wasn't white. And that kind of perpetuated as I was growing up. And I always wished I was white, but now looking back and, having experienced more Asian things, and I actually moved back to Asia for a little bit with my family, I've learned to love my culture. And I really hope that you guys don't feel ashamed of yourselves. I know that a common theme here has been that we minimize our experiences and we keep our head down and just stay quiet. And that's kind of like the Asian thing to do. But don't let anyone minimize your experiences or how you feel. As Tia mentioned, you're valid. Everything you feel and experience is valid. Don't let anyone minimize that. And I also want to say, as Anh-Ton mentioned, that there is racism among Asians too. It's not just white on Asian or white on black. There's Asian on black racism. There's Asian on Latinx racism too. And it's our job to not only check ourselves, but our family members, our friends, even like little microaggressions, those can go a long way and create really lasting negative impact if left unchecked. So that's just something that I want to urge you guys to continue speaking up about and educating yourselves. Yeah, I guess that's all I wanted to say. I know that wasn't like super eloquent or anything like that, but yeah, and the crazy thing is the same people that used to shame me are like now super proud and like happy to drink boba or eat KBBQ, and it's just so frustrating. Like, you made fun of me and made me hate my culture when I was growing up, and now you're indulging in it. So, but yeah, I just want to leave this on a positive note. You guys are all awesome for being here, and thank you so much for letting me speak.
I just want to say thank you for speaking. I don't think that was a bad speech at all. I was fine. No qualms about eloquence here. But I think I just want to echo that last statement. Again, thank you everyone here for coming. It's difficult to come in today with COVID-19, and I think everyone here today has learned something. I think after this, we should remember the stories that were told here, and we should remember that everyone here, these are members of our community. These are people that we see normally, and sometimes when we see them normally, we're not thinking of the racism, not thinking of what they go through. But then, as we've seen here, and as has been exemplified, these are our stories, and we face this racism, and this is something we carry with individually, that we experience all the time. I think that's something that we could serve to all be aware of, and something that is criminally not the case. So right now it's 6:44. At 7 we're gonna be doing the candlelight ceremony and listening to a performance by PengCheng. So right here we have a table with a lot of candles. It's in preparation for the candle lighting ceremony. You want to come up and grab a candle. You got some water, grab a mask if you want. If you guys can just come up, and then we're gonna start lighting them, and then we're gonna wrap the vigil up. Thank you. You can grab any candles for actually.
Hi guys, so as Anh-Ton said, my name is PengCheng or David, if you want to use my Western name. I chose this piece because I think it was very appropriate for the occasion. I think that this piece is like a very earnest prayer, and in it there is a lot of tragedy and like a lot of anguish, and I think that really matches with what everybody feels with the news in Atlanta. But this piece also has hope, and I think that the hope expressed in this piece is like extremely durable. Like it comes out through the tragedy, and I think that our hope needs to be very durable. I think that the problem is very big. It's going to take a long time to solve, and so we need to have stamina, and we need to continue our hope so that we don't wait until the next tragedy happens to do something. So with that, I'll perform the Sarabande.
All right, everyone. Thank you, PengCheng, for that performance. Can we just get another round of applause real quick? That was a really beautiful piece. Moving forward, the sun is about to set right now, and the reason why we came here, as has been said before, is because 8 people died. 8 people were murdered in an act of anti-Asian violence. Let's let those mournful but hopeful notes from PengCheng's performance hang in the air, and start an 8-minute moment of silence. 1 minute for the lives and stories and entire personhoods of the 8 people murdered in the Atlanta shooting. All right, that was just 8 minutes of silence. That's 8 minutes from our day, and that alone felt very long. Whether you're fidgeting or correcting the posture of your back during that, just those 8 minutes alone, I think it felt very long. But let's just remember that for each of those 8 minutes, just 1 minute was the entire life of someone wrongfully ended by racism, wrongfully ended in this hateful attack. You might have fidgeted, you might have felt kind of uncomfortable during those 8 minutes. But let's just remember that for each of those 8 minutes, one of those is just for someone who was murdered. Sometimes as we continue with our days, as we live throughout the day, as we do what we have to do, sometimes we can forget about these stories. We can forget about the racism happening around us. And I think that's a sentiment that's been heard and echoed throughout this entire vigil. But I just really, if you leave here with one thing, I just want you to leave and look at the faces around you. I just want you to remember that everyone here has experienced this some form or another. We all are connected in that. And while this may seem insignificant from the day to day, we're all here for a reason. 8 people were killed 2 weeks ago in attack, which was a product of President Trump's anti-Asian racism from COVID-19. It was a product of lasting centuries of anti-Asian racism, which is a product of racist immigrations to America and entire structures and systems of power. But I think the takeaway here is that we're not alone. As you can see, everyone here, we're in this together. And I said this before, but I'm optimistic. I think in the future, I hope that it's not just events like these which bring us together. It's not just it's not just tragedies that unite us. But I hope after this vigil, you can look at these people, you can look at our faces and know that we were here for each other. You know that we are together, we are united. Thank you everyone for coming.